Hey, everybody. Welcome. Welcome. So glad to be here with all of you tonight. We're going to have yet another great late night chat. So welcome. Let's do it.
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, 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 everybody. We're going to have yet another great late night chat. Wednesdays, we start a little bit later than usual because we have our CPI members check-in. Went very well. We got so many great people around the country doing great work, and it always feels so reassuring to me to meet CPI members. And I had a very productive day today. But anyway, I'm not going to reflect on all of that. But yeah, we're going to do our live stream tonight, just like we always do. First, I'll give my opening remarks, and then from there, we'll do the roll call. Then after that, I will answer your questions. So if you've got something you would like me to talk about in the second half of the show, the best thing to do is go to buymeacoffee.com/Caleb Maupin. Two people have already done it. We got two questions that have come in already, and I look forward to answering them. One from Ian and the other from Tom. I believe it was it Tom? Let me see. But yeah, go to buymeacoffee.com and send your question. No, from Chris. Chris is the guy who sent the other question. And I will answer those questions. You can also do super chats. You can do Rumble rants, but the best way to answer questions is go to buymeacoffee.com/Caleb Maupin. So in terms of announcements, we are the Center for Political Innovation, and coming up is our national convention in Chicago, August 15th. It's going to be a great, great day in Chicago. We're having our national 7-day training program surrounding the convention. So if you can make it, please register for the convention and join us in Chicago. It's going to be a great, great event, a great day. The link is down below in the description. Here's the link. If you haven't gotten it already, I'll put it in the Rumble as well. But yeah, there's the registration link. It's also in the description. Go ahead and register, and we'd love to have you join us at our national convention in Chicago. It's going to be a great day. And basically, we are strategizing because the midterm elections are going to be a complete circus and shit show. And we need to spread anti-imperialism within the midterm elections. And we need to use the midterm elections. As far as we're concerned, it's 6 one way, half a dozen the other. We have no interest in helping the Democrats win or helping the Republicans win. If Trump gets impeached, he deserves it for this ugly war. If the Democrats lose and the Republicans take control, well, I mean, they all supported this war, and they all, have the Democrats have gone along with all the awful things Trump is doing. So we need to just take the midterm elections as an opportunity to build anti-imperialism, because what this country needs is an anti-imperialist movement. And I actually wrote this article for CPI explaining what our orientation will be for the midterms. We need to build an axis of resistance within the midterm electoral circus and use the elections as an opportunity to spread anti-imperialism amid the elections. That's what we need to do. So, if you could check us out, come to the convention. We could use some donations for CPI. You can go to the website, cpiusa.org/donate. We could use some donations. Thank you to everyone who has sent contributions. We just got to build an anti-imperialist movement. We are the Center for Political Innovation, and we are building an anti-imperialist movement in America. Yes, that is us. We are the Center for Political Innovation. If you'd like to donate to help us do our thing at our national convention, you can donate at the link here. If you'd like to become a member, just go to the website and click join. We'd love to plug you into activities. We got a lot going on. We are building an anti-imperialist movement because that's the only thing that's going to get us out of the rut that our country is in. Right now, we're in a long-term crisis of imperialism. The globalist imperialist economic order is breaking down, and we need a movement. We need a movement of working people to oppose it. So, yeah, just a quick reminder then, if you've got something for me to talk about in the second half of the show, if you could just go to buymeacoffee.com/Caleb Maupin, that would be the best way to do it. You can also do super chats, rumble rants, whatever you want to do. Send me something to talk about in the second half of our program. Just a reminder. All right. Well, folks, the news is harder and harder to take every day. I look at the news and I want to puke. The war in Iran is back on. ICE is killing people. Our living standard is going down. I mean, it's so much. On Monday, when Trump resumed bombing Iran, I went and reported on it from downtown Brooklyn. This was me reporting on Trump announcing that he'll be addressing the nation on Thursday evening and that he will be, resuming the war against Iran.
Right now, but we will be hitting him, like as an example, we're going to hit him very hard tonight, and we're going to hit him hard tomorrow, and there's not a damn thing they can do about it. They have nothing. They have nothing going other than they have big mouths.
And this is earlier footage released by the U.S. Central Command. It is said to show a strike on a ship maintenance facility in Iran. The attack was actually the first time America used its marine-based drones in combat operations. Washington said the operation significantly reduced Iran's potential to conduct attacks on commercial vessels. RT correspondent Caleb Maupin has more on the situation.
Well, the memorandum of understanding is long gone and in the pages of history as the war between the United States and Iran is back on. Now, Donald Trump is using his brass language that he's famous for to make clear that the USA is attacking Iran once again. Here is some of what Donald Trump said on his social media.
The Hormuz Strait is open and will remain open with or without Iran. We are reinstating the Iranian blockade, so named because it is only stopping Iran's ships or customers from entering or leaving. All other countries will have fair and open use of the strait. The USA will be, from this point forward, known as the guardian of the Hormuz Strait, but as such, and as a matter of fairness, will be reimbursed at the rate of 20% on all cargo shipped for any and all costs necessary to do the job of providing safety and security to this very volatile section of the world. The process and formation will begin immediately.
Now, this potentially opens up a constitutional crisis as Congress voted, both houses, urging Donald Trump to end the war and telling him he needed congressional authorization to resume the war. But it appears Donald Trump has resumed the war. Strikes are taking place without congressional approval. Now, the U.S. Constitution designates the President of the United States as the Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. military. However, there was an explicit congressional resolution telling Trump that he had to move toward ending the war and that in order to resume strikes, he needed congressional approval. So what is going to happen next? It appears Trump is moving without Congress's permission, and this may end up in federal courts, whether or not it's legal for Donald Trump to unilaterally resume the war. Now, we've heard from the Iranian foreign minister who made clear that Iran will be in control of the Strait of Hormuz, that the USA has no right to dictate how the Strait of Hormuz is controlled, and that that will not change. Here's what we heard from the Iranian foreign minister.
POTUS is absolutely right. Whoever provides secure and safe passage of commercial vessels through the Strait of Hormuz should be compensated for this service. Iran has always been the guardian of the strait and will remain so forever. 20% is, of course, too much. We will be fair.
Now, at this point, as the conflict continues with the Strait of Hormuz closed and the gas and energy prices rising around the world and the world economy suffering the consequences, many have big questions about what is approaching. U.S. oil reserves are being depleted. There is a midterm election set to take place in November where the Democrats and Republicans will battle for control of the U.S. Congress. The latest news is that Donald Trump intends to address the U.S. public on Thursday evening. It's not clear what his Oval Office speech will be about. So at this point, we know the strikes against Iran are resuming. We've heard Donald Trump's brass language. We've heard Iran speaking up defiantly and saying that they have the right to control the Strait of Hormuz. We hear Donald Trump announcing that he will be giving an Oval Office address on Thursday. That's where things currently stand.
But will Iran...
Yeah, it's a disaster. It's absolutely a disaster, right? The USA on February 28th launched a completely unprovoked, unjustified attack at a time when Iran was negotiating with the United States, murdered Iran's supreme leader, their highest leader, their religious leader, the leader of the Islamic Revolution, and then blew up a girls' elementary school, killed a whole bunch of schoolgirls, hundreds of them. Has completely launched an unprovoked attack on the country. So Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz, which they say, look, if you're going to attack us, we're going to close down a vitally important part of our territorial waters that is key in the oil markets. And because the Strait of Hormuz is now closed, the world economy is now screaming. And the USA is now backing Saudi Arabia in attacking Yemen also because Ansarullah, the Houthis of Yemen, as they're commonly called in U.S. media, are aligned with Iran, and they could close the Strait of Bab al-Mandab. And U.S. oil reserves are set to run out in August, and the price of gasoline, the price of everything is through the roof. Trump has taken a move that would make Israel more secure because Iran is the center of opposition to Israel. But does not benefit the world economy, doesn't benefit Americans. He has put America last. America is screaming, and our living conditions are getting worse, and our soldiers, our servicemen are getting killed. And this is absolutely a disaster, and it's really, really demoralizing because millions of people voted for Trump because he said no new wars. They voted for Trump specifically to avoid this kind of situation. But Trump is not really in power, right? We're ruled by the big monopolies and corporations. And it looks like Trump made some kind of agreement with them that instead of them putting him in jail to keep him from running for office, from winning the presidency, or instead of them, killing him, which apparently there were 2 assassination attempts, one of which was by a Ukrainian. Trump made some kind of deal that he would get in and do what the Zionist Israel lobby and Wall Street monopolies wanted and go all in against Iran. And it's having a devastating impact. And there's really not a way out of this for Trump. Now, I don't know what's coming on this Thursday night speech, but it sounds bad. It sounds very, 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 very bad. However, Trump and J.D. Vance are reassuring us there won't be a ground invasion of Iran. Well, thank God for that, because Iran is locked down and ready to fight. I've been to Iran, and I've seen that every neighborhood in Iran is decorated with the faces of the people in the neighborhood who fought the Iraqi invaders. They have been practicing and rehearsing for a ground invasion for years. There's no country that's more prepared for a ground invasion than the Islamic Republic of Iran, because they dealt with one in the 1980s, and they have what they call the Basij and the Islamic Revolutionary Guards in every neighborhood and every community. And, if the USA were to invade Iran, you could count on tens of thousands of Americans coming home in body bags. It would be an absolute disaster. Well, J.D. Vance recently reassured us that's not going to happen. This is J.D. Vance, the vice president.
It's not awful. Good. It's not good, right? And so, if the Iranian people want to rise up and change their government, that's up to them. But we're not going to send 150,000 ground troops in order to accomplish a change in a regime unless the people on the ground themselves want to accomplish that outcome. Now, we're not going to send the troops in regardless, but to propose sending in the troops, you're basically saying that the U.S. military should do the job for the Iranian people. We're not in that business anymore. We're just not.
Yeah, well, the Iranian people don't want to overthrow the Islamic Republic. If they did, they've had plenty of opportunity. And, you know, they're the anti-government riots and the terrorist attacks and the Mujahideen Khalq and the Pahlavists. And, you know, there are plenty of anti-government forces that have had every opportunity to go out and riot and burn shit and burn police stations, etc. And, you know, the Islamic Republic has a huge amount of support because they brought full electrification to Iran, because they brought medical care to all of Iran, because they've wiped out illiteracy, because they've raised living conditions in the country, right? They have an economic system there they call not capitalism, but Islam, the resistance economy. And after the revolution, they launched the construction jihad, where they mobilized and built in that country, and especially in the rural areas. The population of Iran is very, very supportive of the Islamic Republic because it has brought them huge economic development and opportunity. And, you know, the people in the rural areas of Iran are very religious, and they have really benefited from the Islamic Republic and its development policies. And they're not going to overthrow the government. And the government has a very well-organized and well-disciplined population that has its back. So the USA is not going to do a ground invasion of Iran. It's just not going to happen. And, you know, he said there that the USA would send 150,000 combat troops. The USA doesn't have 150,000 combat ready troops at this point, right? And that's something many people have pointed out, that we don't even have that many active duty servicemen to send in. We would have to bring in a whole bunch of other countries. It would be a disaster. So what is Trump going to say on Thursday night? I don't know. I will tell you this. The Democrats are looking to use the unpopular war and the economic fallout and the anger at Trump to win the upcoming elections. And their hope is to regain control of the House of Representatives and then impeach Trump in his second term. They would like to impeach Donald Trump. Whereas the Republican strategy at this point is that they want to end the war right before the midterm elections and have the economy suddenly get better and J.D. Vance get the credit so that J.D. Vance can run for president as a Republican and not be blamed for the war. J.D. Vance is saying he was against the war from the beginning, and J.D. Vance is the guy who's negotiating with the Iranians. So the Iranians, basically have a situation where both sides in American politics see what happens in the next couple months as being to their benefit. The Republicans would like to end the war and present J.D. Vance as the peacemonger on a white horse. He was against it from the beginning, etc. The Democrats would like to blame Trump for this wildly unpopular war, blame the Republicans, use it to take back the control of Congress so they can impeach Donald Trump. They won't impeach him for his war crimes against the Iranian people. They'll impeach him for some silly thing that he did, had given money to the wrong person, or, the last two times they impeached him, it was over meaningless stuff. January 6th. And before that, it was over a phone call to Zelensky. So that's kind of the situation we're in. It's a disaster, but ultimately August is when the oil reserves of the United States run out. And at that point, the economy starts really screaming. So this war in Iran, there has to be an end to it. The question is, who will benefit from the end? Will it be the Democrats or the Republicans? And I think both sides. And, it's really wild because if you go back to 1980, there was an election in the United States. And at the time, the Iranian embassy, or the U.S. embassy in Iran, had been taken hostage. And Ronald Reagan approached Khomeini and said, hold the hostages until I take office. And that when the day Ronald Reagan was sworn in, they returned the hostages, from the U.S. embassy. Iran released the hostages. And, that was, they called it the October surprise because Jimmy Carter had a rescue mission to try and rescue the American hostages, and it failed. And that really set the stage for Ronald Reagan winning the election. And Iran had a lot to do with how the 1980 election turned out, that Jimmy Carter was making the U.S. economy scream, and Iran was really mad at the United States and had taken the hostages, and Ronald Reagan was saying he would increase the military budget and that he was a tough, no-nonsense military guy, and they arranged for the humiliation of the United States by Iran to to continue, and the hostages not to be returned until the very day Ronald Reagan took office, as a dig at Jimmy Carter. And what happens in the next few months, in a lot of ways, the ball is in Iran's court. But at the same time, Iran has suffered horrendous, vicious, murderous attack from the United States. Supreme leader murdered, right? Their ports destroyed. And Iran, they can't just do nothing, right? And, I know what they're all chanting in Iran, right? And on the one hand, that's not helping bring peace, right? Because Trump, apparently the way, according to Gray Zone, the way Trump was convinced to do this war, part of it was at least having Trump believe that Iran was trying to kill him. And of course, as they buried the Supreme Leader Khamenei at all of the funerals, they're chanting for revenge against Trump. And I'm not showing any of those clips on here because it's illegal, right? It is actually illegal. And I see what the Iranians are all saying. And I'm not repeating that message because it would be illegal. But that said, what would any other country do? I'm not saying it's right what they're saying. I'm not advocating that Iran do that. Certainly not advocating that because, again, that's illegal. But, if some other country attacked us randomly and killed our head of state, there would be people on the street calling for vengeance. And Iran can't just let this go. Right? Iran can't just go, you attacked us, you killed our supreme leader, you blew up an elementary school and killed a whole bunch of our children, you've been bombing us and attacking us for absolutely no reason because we're not trying to get a nuclear weapon. And, that's cool. All right. Well, bygones be bygones, right? No, they can't do that, right? Iran has to fight back. And so we're in an odd situation. And what happens in August and what happens in September will have a big impact on the midterms. But really, it's 6 one way, half a dozen the other for the working class. Because you do not forget for 1 minute that when Trump gave his awful State of the Union address, as he gave his State of the Union address, the Democrats sat down. When Donald Trump talked about transgender, they sat down. When he talked about immigration, they sat down. Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders and AOC, they all sat there like this. They wouldn't stand up and applaud for him. But when he said, and I'm going to attack Iran, and Iran will never get a nuclear weapon, and we're going to attack them, all of those Democratic jackasses stood up. All of them. Elizabeth Warren and AOC and all of those Democratic jackasses stood up and gave a standing ovation for Trump's war on Iran. And they could have stopped it. They could have stopped it before it happened. Thomas Massie had a war powers resolution, and they delayed it just in time, just to make sure that it didn't pass, but they didn't even vote on it. They knew the attack was coming, and they delayed it. They delayed it just to make sure that, and then any chance that Thomas Massie's war resolution wouldn't pass. The Democrats are fully complicit in this. Now, right now, and let's remember also, when Biden took office in 2020, after the 2020 election, 2021, the Democrats went all in against all anti-imperialists on the left. And it wasn't just cancel culture. They smeared and defamed me viciously. I became, it was unsafe for me to go to any leftist space. I was an evil white supremacist. They had Vosh and all of them screaming about anyone who supports Russia or China is actually a secret Nazi. We all got threats of violence. The Democrats launched an all-out campaign. You are not welcome in our camp. And that included the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America. You were not welcome in their space if you were anti-war. And it didn't stop at internet cancel culture and smearing and hate. They also sent the FBI to raid the homes of the Uhuru movement. And I'm going to talk about that because they're about to have their appeal hearing in federal court. And so, John McCarthy, who is an important member of our organization, who has been key in our solidarity with the Uhuru movement, he'll be attending their hearing in federal court in Georgia. So I'm going to put the video of what happened. This is what the Democrats did to a group of black socialist activists, right? At the same time, they were naming streets after George Floyd, etc. They also decided to send the FBI to raid the homes of black revolutionary activists in Missouri and Florida.
After the rioting was done, U.S. media kind of forgot about those communities. Well, Uhuru, they went out there because they saw black and brown people like themselves that were out there protesting and rioting. And they stayed there, and they've been there since 2014, providing services in the community, giving these young people in the community something constructive to do, not just go out and break shit to raise awareness about the conditions they're in, but ways to actually feed people and serve the community. And they've been there in St. Louis since 2014 doing constructive work. They have really escalated these programs. They have a farmer's market. They provide classes and services to pregnant mothers, and in particular in St. Louis, Missouri, and in St. Petersburg, Florida. They're trying to undo the damage that the U.S. Department of Justice and the state police and the local police and all the forces have been doing in communities like Ferguson, Missouri. And at the same time that they've done this community work, the African People's Socialist Party has also taken a firm anti-imperialist stance. They support China. They support Russia. They support Cuba. They support Iran. And when the United States started piling weapons into Kiev, they defended Russia's right to intervene.
This defensive war in Ukraine that Russia is actually waging against world colonial powers, not Ukraine as a single entity, but the U.S. and all colonial powers who have an interest in colonially dominating African people right here in this country and around the world and extracting resources from the majority of peoples on the planet. That system, this current system, is in severe crisis, and they cannot rule in the same old way.
Because of that, their homes were raided. Then months later, the federal government came out with an indictment, and it's charging them with being Russian agents. And it's trying to allege that the election campaign that they ran in St. Petersburg, Florida, was somehow interference in the U.S. electoral process.
4 activists associated with the People's Democratic Uhuru Movement and the African People's Socialist Party have been indicted by the U.S. Department of Justice. The indictment from the U.S. Department of Justice accuses them of spreading Russian propaganda and cites simply some web conferences that they had, some Zoom meetings, some emails they sent out, as well as the fact that they have run routine election campaigns. Is this of concern to the Secretary General as an attack on human rights, freedom of assembly, etc.?
I frankly was not aware of the case before you mentioned it. Let me look into it, and I will get back to you.
What's going on in Africa is directly connected to what's going on here. What's going on in Ukraine is connected to what's going on in Harlem. You know what I'm saying? It's an international, global economy that's all connected.
Because they go to conferences in Russia, this constitutes Russian meddling in the elections. The whole thing is ridiculous. It's completely, utterly ridiculous. They've been running these campaigns for years, since before I was born. Back in the 1970s, they were running people for office. Their platform of reparations, I mean, Marianne Williamson, she's a major Democrat candidate. She also says she believes in reparations. I mean, it's not a unique message that they have in that sense, but they have been targeted because they're doing what you're supposed to do. I mean, you know, at all of our meetings, we have a picture of Fred Hampton up on the stage because Fred Hampton, he built a free breakfast program. He organized what he called a rainbow coalition, uniting low-income people, white, black, brown, Arab, Latino, into one organization, you know, trying to build up community empowerment, trying to do community service projects while teaching Marxism and socialism. You know, we look at Fred Hampton as a great example of the American revolutionary tradition. And, you know, the African People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru movement, you know, they don't like that we wave the American flag. They don't like that we consider ourselves patriotic. They have their own kind of unique analysis. They talk about what they call the colonial mode of production. That's not traditional Marxist thinking. And we don't agree with them on a number of issues. But it doesn't matter. We support them.
We all have to stand up and oppose the ideology of division and support an ideology of unity based upon our material interests, you know what I'm saying, to work together.
People who can't understand that, people who can't get past, you know, this or that, like, we got to put aside our differences and say that if they come for them, they come for all of us. If they go after them, they got to deal with all of us. That needs to be the attitude among anti-imperialists.
Yeah. And Biden sent the FBI to raid these people's homes, to indict 3 activists and charge them with being unregistered agents of Russia, to put them through a huge trial in federal court where they were found not guilty of being Russian agents, but guilty of conspiracy to defraud the American government by not registering as foreign agents. The judge looked at the case and said, basically, I'm not going to give you any jail time. I'm not going to give you a fine. I'm going to give you community service and probation. They were released early from their probation. But now they're headed to federal court to say, look, this was an attack on our freedom of speech. This trial should never have happened. And the whole verdict needs to be thrown out. And so I'm really proud that our organization will be there in the federal court in Atlanta, Georgia, to represent our support for their organization because we have been consistently there. I was at their trial on the day it opened. I was at their sentencing. I have been to the Uhuru House in Florida. I was just at their national plenary that they did in April in Missouri. I was a featured speaker. And we have gone out of our way to stand with the Uhuru movement. And let me add, most of the so-called socialist and communist groups did nothing to support the Uhuru movement because they're agents of the Democrat Party, right? Most of these Democrat shills, like Hassan Piker and others, they spread lies about the Uhuru movement, called them a cult, called them all this kind of stuff. And that made it easier for the FBI to go after them. And then, and Tucker Carlson supported the Uhuru movement. And a lot of Republicans supported the Uhuru movement because they saw this as Biden cracking down on dissent. And we went out of our way to stand with the Uhuru movement, to connect them with Tara Reid, who connected them to Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson did multiple news stories about their case, interviewed Chairman O'Malley. We have played a very, very important role in standing with the Uhuru movement. We're very proud of it. But that's the Uhuru movement. You have to remember, right, that, right now, and we appreciate it, there are Democrat-aligned voices like the Democratic Socialists of America that are being friendlier to CPI, and we do appreciate it, and if people want to do anti-war stuff with us, have us on their podcasts, have us speak at their rallies, fine, we'll do it. We'll stand with anybody against the wars. But we are not interested in helping the Democrats retake Congress so they can impeach Trump. We're not, because the Democrats aren't going to do any better. We are interested in spreading anti-imperialism, and we have a mission in the upcoming elections, which is to get anti-imperialism everywhere. With postering campaigns, with interventions, with outreach, we have a plan. And our national 7-day training program and our national convention will be about that plan. We have a job to do, folks. We ain't got time to screw around. We ain't got time to argue with every other little group that sounds like us. We got a job to do, right? And that job, because of CPI, there need to be posters promoting anti-imperialism all over major cities where we have a presence. There need to be interventions and disruptions at Democrat and Republican rallies this fall. There need to be people learning about CPI. And when Tucker Carlson launches his new political party, we got to be there and we got to tell them about innovationism and anti-imperialism. And when people gather to support Jill Stein and the Green Party in Chicago, we got to be there and we got to tell them about innovationism. We have a job to do. We need to saturate this country with anti-imperialism. And that is our orientation. And our August workshop and our August activities will be about preparing for the battle this fall, not a battle between the Republicans and the Democrats, but a battle to saturate anti-imperialism amid the midterm circus. That is what we will aim to do. And I believe that we will be successful in doing it. The reason that we're having a horrendous war against Iran, the reason that living standards in America are dropping, this is all rooted in the breakdown of capitalism. It's due to the fact that poverty amid plenty and technology making the economy more and more unstable has never been a bigger factor than it is now, right? That capitalism is the only system in history where you have poverty created by abundance. You have glut. And the breakdown of capitalism is leading to a very, very unstable economy. And there's no place for the workers at the assembly line. And we can't buy back all that we're producing. We're producing more efficiently than ever before. Their kit system cannot handle this. And we need a government of action that fights for working families. We need a state that is powerful and will break the power of the big monopolies and start investing in human labor power, not wars and derivative ripoffs and destruction. We need a government of action that'll fight for working families. And that's what the Center for Political Innovation is all about. And, I was just on the Jimmy Dore show on Friday talking about it. I've been on the Kim Iverson show. I've been on so many podcasts and so many different shows. And we're building a real movement of people that are out in the streets. And our members were in the streets of Los Angeles this weekend. Our members were in the streets of Minneapolis. We had a big rally, to kick off the month of July here in New York City in Times Square. We're building an anti-imperialist movement. That's what we're all about. Now, I wanted to draw your attention to this. This is why it's important that we do outreach. The social media outlets are being rigged. And I did a video about this, but I will show it on here. I couldn't believe this, but, facts are now being described by Google as myths. Take a look at this. This is the video that I recorded. Two Google searches for true things brought us results calling them false, and then if you read the fine print, they're true. I couldn't believe it. It's infuriating. Fact that Zbigniew Brzezinski, the national security advisor to U.S. President Jimmy Carter, a longtime U.S. foreign policy strategist, did in fact call his policy of trying to create a situation where the Soviet Union would feel compelled to send forces into Afghanistan the Afghan trap. And he said his intention was to give the Soviet Union their own Vietnam. This is a fact, but yet if you do a Google search for it, the first thing that comes up is an article calling this a myth. Yet if you read the article, it actually admits Brzezinski did say this and did call this his strategy. But yet the deceptive headline would make you believe that this isn't true. Why is that the first thing that comes up? Very interesting, isn't it? One thing I have frequently pointed out is that the U.S. government, through the Department of Agriculture, buys all kinds of agricultural products, including cheese, as a way to deal with the problem of overproduction and keep food and dairy prices high in order to stabilize the economy. Well, this is true, but yet if you Google it, you will find articles and results telling you that this is a myth, but then if you read the fine print, they admit it's true. Why is Google telling us that true things are myths and giving us results that lead us to believe that true things are conspiracy theories and false? And yet, if you read the articles, they admit that they're true. Why is it that information technology is being rigged in a way that plays into people's short attention spans to try and keep people from believing things that are true that don't serve the power structure of the United States? Yeah, it is a fact that Zbigniew Brzezinski did call the policy of trying to pressure and create a situation where the Soviet Union would invade Afghanistan. He did call it the Afghan trap. The intention was to give the Soviet Union their own Vietnam and weaken the Soviet Union. But yet, if you Google it, it comes up with an article saying this is a myth. And if you read the article doesn't even say it's not true. It just says, well, Brzezinski was actually, opposed to the Soviet Union invading Afghanistan. He did denounce it. It's not like he wanted him to do it. It doesn't even say he didn't say that. He did say that. In addition to that, if you type in about the cheese cave in Missouri, it says it's an urban legend, except it's not an urban legend. You dig into it, it actually is true. And it says the U.S. government does buy millions of dollars worth of dairy products in order to stabilize the economy and keep the prices low. And there is a cave full of cheese in Missouri. But yet if you Google it, it says this is an urban legend. But then if you read the fine print, it's not an urban legend. It's true, right? And so they're rigging Google searches to say things that are true are myths and urban legends. It's absolutely infuriating. That's why we have to just do our outreach. We can't depend on social media and all of this. It's absolutely crazy. And I made a video about that because it needed to be said. And, I made a couple other little videos. I have time. I'm sitting in the park and I have like something I can talk about for 2 seconds. And people like those kind of short videos. So that's another thing. Now, before we go to the Q&A, this isn't going to be a huge, long live stream tonight. I wanted to just have kind of a cultural portion because when I went to go film my report for RT about the Iran war getting started again, there is a carousel in downtown Brooklyn, the merry-go-round with horses on it. And as I walked by it, I heard a song that I know very, very well, a classic American melody. This is what I heard as I walked by the carousel. Yeah. So that song is called Red Wing, and it is the name of a city in Minnesota. And fascinating, right? So it is a very famous song from 1907, at the time that ragtime music was very, very popular. And there is a city in Minnesota called Red Wing, and it was named after a Native American chief, Chief Red Wing, who died. And somebody got the idea that they should write a song about a widow, the widow of Chief Red Wing, crying about her husband's death. And so this guy wrote a ragtime song with that tune. And it was a very, very popular song in 1907. Now, the song Red Wing, I'm not going to put a version with the lyrics on it because they're kind of racist. And it kind of matches a pattern, especially at that time in American history, like that time and earlier, right? Stephen Foster, for example, right? Very famous American folk singer, Stephen Foster. He wrote a song. His father died. And he wrote a song about his father's death, which, he didn't write about his father dying. He wrote about a bunch of slaves crying because their slave master is dead, called Masters in the Cold, Cold Ground. It's a really racist, offensive song. But it's like Stephen Foster was sad about his own father dying, but he had to project it onto Black people, right? It was part of the Anglo-American culture. It was like, we respectable white people don't have feelings. So if we're going to write a song about someone being really sad or someone being angry and emotional, we're going to find non-white people and have them have the emotions because they're somehow less than human, or they're like little children and they can have feelings and it'll be cute and we can write a song about it. This is like a weird trend. There's a lot of songs in American culture that are like that, from this time period where it's like they write songs about people having feelings that are very, very normal, but they project the song is written by a white person, but it's projected onto a non-white person. So this song is about, oh, the moon shines bright on little Red Wing, right? She is crying. It's about the woman is sad that the Native American chief who died, his wife is crying that he died. And so they wrote this song. It was very popular, and there's a city named after this Native American chief. He apparently made a big impression. He was a Dakota, a Dakota Native American leader who, was apparently quite an important figure in the region's history. They named a little city after him, and then it became this popular song. And then later, Woody Guthrie took the lyrics, or took the tune, and he made it into Union Made, which is one of Woody Guthrie's most famous songs, right? Which, Union Made, and it just became quite popular. Now, my grandmother, she passed away, but my senior year of high school, her husband had died, and we moved her into kind of assisted living in the area that we were living, and I would go and visit her after school, my senior year of high school. And she loved to watch the Lawrence Welk Show, which is funny because the Lawrence Welk Show hasn't been on television since the 1960s and 70s. And it was a show that old people watched a long time ago. And it's kind of bizarre, but it's like, it was a show for old people a long time ago. And my grandmother watched reruns of this show for old people from the 70s and 80s in the 2000s when I would go visit her. She loved to watch the Lawrence Welk Show. And she would say, he's got really good music, that Lawrence Welk. And it was kind of weird. My mother would say, it's funny. You'd think she would watch a show that old people watch now. But my grandmother was so old fashioned. She watched a show that old people watched back a generation ago. And she would watch the Lawrence Welk Show. And it was just a television show that was on TV in the 60s and 70s. And it was just this guy from Minnesota, Lawrence Welk, who had kind of an accent. Lawrence Welk would bring on different people and they would just play kind of folksy old time music. So this is a clip of Tiny Little, right? One of the pianists, the guy who played the piano on the Lawrence Welk Show every night, was a very large guy. And so they nicknamed him Tiny Little. I think his last name was actually Little. I don't think his first name was actually Tiny, but they called him Tiny Little. This is Tiny Little performing the ragtime piano version of Red Wing on the Lawrence Welk Show.
Thank you, fellows. Red Wing is the name of a settlement in Tiny Little's native state of Minnesota. Tiny would like to dedicate this next number to the folks in Red Wing. Johnny Klein, will you start us off?
So anyhow, most people know that that hey, you got to have something cultural. I like to just talk about little things like this, right? E. Michael Jones wrote a parody of Little Red Wing. Oh, okay. Well, anyhow, everybody knows Woody Guthrie did his version of Red Wing. He did Union Made, right? They approached Woody Guthrie and they said, "We'd like you to write a song to be the theme song of the Ladies Auxiliary of the United Auto Workers Union." So he did a song that, it's a popular leftist labor song. There once was a union maid who never was afraid. And then, the story goes that Woody Guthrie presented it to them and they said, "No, you can't do it because it doesn't have the words Ladies Auxiliary in the chorus." And this is for the, and he was very disappointed by that. But what's interesting though, is a generation before Woody Guthrie wrote his leftist labor version of it, Joe Hill, people know Joe Hill, the famous socialist American folk singer who was executed by the state of Utah. Joe Hill wrote his own version of Red Wing. He wrote a much more radical leftist version of Red Wing that he wrote called Working Men Unite. So this is Joe Hill's like straight up communist version of Red Wing. It's called Working Men Unite. And I love the lyrics because it almost reminds me of a Cornelius Cardew song in that the lyrics don't cut any punches. The chorus is, "Why should we be slaves and work for wages? It is outrageous." But anyway, here we go. This is the Joe Hill socialist version of Red Wing, Working Men Unite.
They are bad, and some of you are sad. You cannot see your enemy, the class that lives in luxury. The working men are poor, will be forevermore, as long as you permit the few to guide your destiny. Shall we still be slaves and work for wages? It is outrageous, has been for ages. This earth by right belongs to toilers, and not the spoilers of liberty. The master class is small, but they have a lot of gall. When we unite to gain our right, when they resist, we'll use our might. There is no middle ground, the fight must go on round. To victory for liberty, our class is marching on. Shall we still be slaves and work for wages? It is outrageous, has been for ages. This earth by right belongs to toilers, not the spoilers of liberty. put up a fight to make us free from slavery and capitalistic tyranny. The fight is not in vain, we've got a world to gain. Will you be a fool, a capitalist too, and serve your enemy? Shall we still be slaves and work for wages? It is outrageous, has been for ages. This earth by right belongs to toilers, not the spoilers of liberty. Shall we still be slaves and work for wages? It is outrageous, has been for ages. This earth by right belongs to toilers, not the spoilers of liberty. Shall we still be slaves and work for wages? It is outrageous, has been for ages. This earth by right belongs to toilers, not the spoilers of liberty.
Yep. Yeah, and actually it's funny because the what do you call it? The line in that song, right? In the last verse, will you be a fool, a capitalist's tool, and serve your enemy? That line, actually, Forbes magazine, which is a very business oriented magazine, took that line as like their slogan. Forbes magazine would advertise itself as a capitalist's tool, right? So that probably comes from that song, right? I don't know for a fact, but Forbes magazine, that used to be their catchphrase. Subscribe to Forbes magazine, a capitalist's tool, right? Like it was like ironic, like it's a magazine, don't be a capitalist, don't be a fool, a capitalist tool, and serve your enemy. Well, I guess Forbes magazine was, calling itself a capitalist tool. So anyway, I like to do these little cultural things. I like to just talk about that. I will say, I am a kind of person, I love a strong melody, right? A lot of music nowadays doesn't have a very strong melody, but I love melodies like that, right? I love a strong melody. I really, really do. That's just kind of how I am. I really appreciate strong melodies. And so if I hear about a strong melody, I will talk about it. I will say I really like folk music. I grew up with folk music. My parents really like folk music. They're boomers, and they took me to a lot of folk music concerts when I was a kid. And so I like that kind of stuff. So anyway, let's do the roll call, and then I'll answer any questions people have, and then we're done for tonight because it's late, and I'll be back tomorrow. But names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Who is with us? Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Anybody? Portland, Oregon, Jake. Good to see you, Jake. Jenny in Cincinnati is here. Paul in Brentwood. Good to see you, Paul. Ryan in Kansas City. Brian in Dayton. Brian, change your name there. I don't like putting that on the screen. I don't want someone to pop on randomly and think this is, crude, change your thing, come on. We don't want to talk about flatulence on these streams, and every time I put your comments on the screen, I have to see that. Come on, man. Marvin in New Jersey. I like you, Brian. I like what you say, but I don't want to, Irene in Brooklyn. Good to see you. Yeah, I know it's funny. I'm weird like that. And I just put you on the screen. So there you go. Michael in Bayonne. Good to see you. Michael is a great guy. Oh, and Irene is great. And everyone here is great. Even the Chris guy that has the weird thing. Peter in Switzerland. Have we ever had anyone from Switzerland on here before? I don't know. Well, welcome, Peter from Switzerland. Good to have you. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Anybody else? Names and locations. Anybody? The Milky Way galaxy. I'm in there too. Would you believe that? I'm in the Milky Way galaxy. Say hi. I bet we'll bump into each other sometime. I am in the Milky Way galaxy also. Who would have guessed? Oh, there we go. Bonnie in Baltimore. Welcome, Bonnie. All right. Anybody else? Names and locations. Names and locations. Goose from Earth. Who would have guessed? I'm from Earth too. And Fakiho from Montreal. Welcome, Fakiho. Anybody else? Names and locations. Names and locations tonight. Anybody else with us? Names and locations. Sunny in the super imperialist complex. All right. All right. All right. Well, anyhow, folks, I am going to, Southern California. Very good. I am going to start answering people's questions. Quick reminder, if you do have a question for me to answer in the second half of the show, please go to buymeacoffee.com/Caleb Maupin and send your questions, or you can do a super chat. We do accept super chats here. You can do Rumble rants, however you want to do it. So we got three questions that have come in so far. You know, any more Buy Me a Coffee? 3 from Buy Me a Coffee have come in so far. The first is from Chris, and Chris said, "It's a sincere question. Why is hormone-free milk considered healthy, but pumping fetuses, women, and men with hormones is safe? Are the poor women pumped with hormones as surrogate mothers treated well? It's not a safe global industry, and it's not Malthusian to say that." I have no idea about that. What is hormone-free milk? Does the milk that you buy when you go to the grocery store have hormones in it? I have no idea what you're talking about, brother. When hormones, are you talking about the transgender thing where they give people hormones? Are you talking about food that's like injected with hormone treatments? I do not give health advice on here, right? Other than doing this, right? I do recommend that when people wake up, you know, the exercise I try to do is I hold my arms above my head as long as I possibly can. When we do mega streams on here, when I stream for like 8 hours on Thanksgiving and Christmas, I often will try to hold my arms up above my head. And, you know, but other than telling people to hold their arms up above their head, or maybe working out can be a good thing to do, I really don't give health advice here. Not my department, not in my pay grade. So the hormones given to the dairy cows, I don't know what he's talking about. You know, Hegseth testing testosterone levels in the U.S. military, push-ups and porn galore. Porn? I don't know. Okay. I don't know. RBST. What is RBST? I don't know any of this. I don't know any of this, folks. This is above my pay grade. And it's kind of like one of those things where it's almost like I don't want to know. You know, I know people who get really into this and all of that. And I do want to know a lot of things, right? I do have intellectual curiosity about a lot of things, but I have a feeling that, you know, I am addicted to Diet Coke. I'll just tell you that much. I'm not addicted to cigarettes. I don't smoke, and I don't drink alcohol. Actually, I made a decision, basically. I never really got much out of drinking, and I just decided, no alcohol. But I drink Diet Coke like a motherfucker. I drink lots of Diet Coke, you know, and I have a feeling that we're going to find out, you know, decades from now that Diet Coke is just as bad as smoking cigarettes. And, you know, I mean, Diet Coke can't be good for you. You look at what's in it and the, you know, substitute chemicals, and it can't be good for you, but, you know, it's something I do. And I'm sure that a lot of the processed fast food and all that stuff we eat is really, really bad for all of us. So, you know, I'm not here to give people health advice. I'd be a huge hypocrite if I was. I'm not that kind of influencer. This is not a manosphere thing. I mean, there might be some overlap. Manosphere guys often don't like Israel. I don't like Israel. You know, manosphere guys often are critical of mainstream media. I'm critical of mainstream media. Manosphere guys are often religious. I'm religious. But other than that, I mean, you know, this isn't a manosphere thing. I'm not here to, you know, lift and be like, man, bro, I'm going to tell you how to lift, man. You got to take this supplement. I'm selling you this supplement. Buy this powder and mix it with water, and I'm going to make you really strong like me, and you're going to get lots of women. I'm not here. It's just not that kind of channel, right? It's just not. I mean, I don't. You know, I don't do that, you know, I don't do that. So there you go. You know, for a while there was somebody, you know, well, anyway, yeah, I like Coke, but I try to limit my soda consumption to 1 per day. I couldn't do that. And also, to be fair, Donald Trump, who's president, drinks 6 Diet Cokes a day. And I usually don't do that many, but I'm close. We're close. So maybe I'll be president someday. You know, or maybe someday I'll start a stupid war and lie to people. I don't know. But I'm just being facetious. But yeah, you know, I Diet Coke is my addiction, and I'm sure it's very, very bad for me. So there you go. I'm not here to give health advice. Yeah, that was a headline today. Pete Hegseth said the military will test service members' testosterone levels. Okay. You know, I don't know. I don't even know what to say about that. So there you go. You know, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you know, if you read The Republic by Plato, right, it said that homosexuality should be encouraged in the military, you know, because it would cause unit cohesion and make the soldiers want to go out and fight really hard to impress the other men. That's, you know, that's in Plato's Republic. So, you know, maybe Pete Hegseth will start trying to make the military more gay. You know, I don't know. I'm just kidding. But I mean, it's just, this is dumb. Anyhow, but sorry, Chris, I wish I could give you more advice about milk hormones and stuff. I just don't, I'm not that kind of guy. You know, I'm not the kind of guy that can do that. So apologies. But Ian then asked, do you think writers, artists, and entertainers can play an important role in combating the British Empire system? Deep down, we're all tired of watching the same old post-apocalyptic city or desert. So I think there is potential for a counterculture that revives optimism and sincerity. I absolutely do think that artists have a very, very important role to play, and that film, novels, music is very, very, very important, actually. And I just got done reading. I read the entire huge, thick Cornelius Cardew biography. I've been playing Cornelius Cardew's music on these streams, and I read this huge book, and I'm going to pass it on to Noah next time I see him in person. It's a huge, it's almost 1,000 pages, you know, on Cornelius Cardew. And, you know, I believe that, yes, writers and artists have an important role. And honestly, I talk a lot about movies on here. I talk a lot about different art that has influenced me, right? And that art is there. And I often talk a lot about social realism and socialist realism and how the CIA tried to destroy that. You know, and replace it with abstract art. And I've written whole essays about that. That is really one of my central themes. You know, I have this essay on the CPI website, which I really recommend people read. It's an extract from my book, The Danger of an American Years of Lead, right? The book I wrote about the Luigi Mangione case and why we shouldn't be celebrating political violence and why we need a real movement, right? I wrote this book, The Danger of an American Years of Lead. There's a section from this book called Luigi Mangione, the New Abstract Painter. And I got into how abstract art makes you feel versus social realism. And, you know, I got into all of that and how, you know, Luigi Mangione and the kind of like emotional outburst that he's associated with, right? Supposedly he was so mad about the healthcare system, he just killed a guy, right? That, you know, Luigi Mangione getting mad, allegedly, I don't think he's guilty necessarily. Luigi Mangione getting mad, you know, and lashing out in a fit of rage and killing one healthcare executive is a lot like Jackson Pollock splattering paint on a canvas. Whereas what we need is the beauty of that you find in social realist art of complex ideas and building mass movements, right? You know, and that Luigi Mangione, that kind of activity in the long run leads to lassitude and hopelessness, whereas social realist art makes people feel confident, etc. You know, and I get into all of this in great detail, and how just kind of resentment and jealousy and you know, lashing out, right, is very deadly. And that's why I find Cornelius Cardew, I have his pamphlet on here, which Paul actually recently was reading and did a video on, which I thought was really cool. I shared it on my Facebook. This is a much shorter book by Cornelius Cardew called Stockhausen Serves Imperialism, because Cornelius Cardew was in this alternative, you know, experimental music scene that BBC, British intelligence, was promoting, right, with John Cage and like art for art's sake. And he realized it's bullshit. And he said, I only want to make, he called it people's liberation music or anti-imperialist revolutionary music instead. And so he was on the inside of this kind of, you know, CIA funded art for art's sake, abstract, you know, psychological manipulation, make people confused and demoralized kind of art. And he came to the conclusion it wasn't helpful. And he wrote this pamphlet, which is very good, you know, concisely like arguing that why the Stockhausen school of experimental music actually serves imperialism. It's very, very good. I love Cornelius Cardew. You know, I really do. And I find his music to be very inspiring. well, you know, one time, the time in my life when I most appreciated Cornelius Cardew's music was when I went to North Carolina for a month in 2012. The Democratic National Convention was happening in North Carolina. And I was in a communist group that was involved in organizing the protests. And they sent me down to North Carolina for a month. And I had like no money at this time. I was living in utter poverty and squalor as a full-time organizer. And so I was down there, and I did not get along very well with the people down there because they were just liberals. And it was Cornelius Cardew's music. I was listening to it every night, and I was like, celebrating my commitment to anti-imperialist ideology. And it got me through a tough month in North Carolina, feeling like I didn't belong with a group of activists. A group of activists that weren't really committed to anti-imperialism, that just wanted to talk about the latest way to be transgender, and we're taking turns going after each other, picking on people. And, it wasn't, and it was really Cardew's music that gave me the inspiration to keep going, and really kind of helped me get through a rough month. And I really like Cardew because it's very, very much, every lyric, the lyrics are a little bit, I have to kind of laugh at them with tongue in cheek because they're a little bit loaded, but they're, and it's optimistic music. There is a lot of leftist music that's very depressing. For example, I really like Arlo Guthrie, the folk musician who's the son of Woody Guthrie. He has a song, though, that is, I refuse to listen to. It's a deeply emotional song about Victor Jara. Victor Jara was this amazing communist folk singer in Chile who was brutally killed by the Pinochet government in the coup. And honestly, the song is it's kind of like the wind that shakes the barley, even though it's right. It's true, right? That Victor Jara was this beautiful musician, and he was killed in this horrifically tragic way. You listen to the song, you just feel like shit afterwards, right? And I just don't, even though I agree, there's a lot of things I agree with that don't make me feel inspired. And that's kind of what this abstract art stuff is like. There's a lot of things that just point to the world being an ugly, mean, scary place and make you feel awful. And it's like, okay, well, if that's correct politically, that a lot of things in this world are awful, are you really making things better by just showing people the awfulness of this world? Not really. And that's what Wallace Wattles, who I love, Wallace D. Wattles, the socialist optimist, right? The socialist, the Christian socialist optimist, the science of being great, the science of getting rich, Jesus, the man and his works. He was all about, optimism and envisioning the good. And he uses Eugene Debs in his multiple books. He always talks about Eugene Debs as like the ultimate, the best kind of ideal socialist, because he made everyone around him feel good. And he says that you really don't help people by showing them poverty. You help people by helping them envision the coming city. And that the job of an activist, of a revolutionary, is to inspire people to think, and that people work really, really hard to do anything but think. Right? They work really, really hard to distract themselves and not think. And Wallace Wattles talks about, that we need to inspire people to think. And that, that's what CPI, that's what we're doing. We're inspiring people to think. We're trying to awaken people, not to live biologically, but to take control of their life, to make decisions, to wrangle with big questions, and intervene in the historical process and really embrace their humanity. When we talk about living biologically, right? That living biologically, most human beings don't really assert their will onto the world. They just kind of interact with their environment, just like a plant or an animal. But humanity does have the ability to master the environment, to force the environment to serve them, and to reinvent the world around them. And that's what it means to be truly human. But most people just don't do it. Most people strive not to do it. They just want to be distracted, and they want art that will distract them. That'll just, it'll distract them. They want alcohol or drugs that'll distract them. They want, they just try not to think. But our job is to awaken people and get people to think. And we don't want people to think about how bad the world is. We want them to think about how good it could be. And we want them to start thinking about how they could make the world a better place. And that's, I quote Wallace Wattles in the essay about Luigi Mangione, inspire people to think about the coming city. So yeah, I wrote this essay, Luigi Mangione, the new abstract painter, that has my critique of art and talks about the role of the artist and the role of the CIA in manipulating art, and how they want art that makes people feel powerless, demoralized, confused. And we want art that makes people feel optimistic and inspires people to think, and makes people feel strong. We like social realism. We don't like abstract art. And it was very, very political how the CIA did that. So thank you for that great question, Ian. And then an anonymous question came in. They said, are you still in the World Anti-Imperialist Platform? I don't think so. I mean, we signed their Paris Declaration. We never rescinded that. I haven't heard from World Anti-Imperialist Platform people in a couple years now. I think the last time we did anything with them was in 2023. So I think it's been about 3 years since we've talked to them. And there was some strange activity. I don't quite exactly know where we stand with them. Originally, the idea of the World Anti-Imperialist Platform was to have only Marxist-Leninist parties involved. And then they kind of wanted all kind of anti-imperialist activists involved. And then they had a rally against NATO. And there was some activities that I don't want to get into. There was some very strange things that happened in the lead up to it. And I haven't heard from them. But, we're still listed. I mean, we haven't rescinded our signature. We still endorse their activities, but I haven't heard from them in a while. For a while, I was in touch with World Anti-Imperialist Platform people, but I haven't heard from them in a while. So, hey, if they want to reach out to me, sure. I mean, and yeah, we've never repudiated our relationship with them or denounced it. The groups involved in that tend to be ML communist groups, and we're not that. We have had the innovationist turn, and we are innovationists. I mean, I have no issue with them, and they do good work. And I mean, there's a lot of people I respect that are part of that. There's been a lot of like interesting regroupments that have happened lately. And, we have learned in CPI, we are the best when we just focus on doing what we do. And if people want to work with us, like the Uhuru movement, like the Unification Church, great. Like some of these people in DSA who want to work with us now, great. People work with anybody who wants to work with us. But we don't, like, when we get caught up in the drama, especially in the international drama, we tend to just lose focus of getting the job done. Because we have a job to do. We have a very, very big job to do, which is the midterms are coming up, and we need there to be anti-imperialist posters all over cities. We need to intervene at town halls and public events and spread anti-imperialism. We need to connect with new people and bring them to workshop. We need to really play an important role in the fall. And that, we have to build an anti-imperialist movement and mobilize people, get people engaged, and build an anti-imperialist movement in America. And that there's a lot of shuffling for position in international formations. Look, I was in Russia in April, and I'm part of this new electoral coalition that monitors elections in the United States, very happy, around the world. And I'm really proud to be part of it. And I've spoken at the Global Digital Forum in Russia, and, our members, I was the leader of the U.S. delegation to the World Youth Festival. I led a press conference at the United Nations. I actually got to speak with President Putin at the World Youth Festival. And, we've done the international thing, and we're still part of it, right? And I'll probably be in Russia pretty soon, in a couple of weeks, it looks like. I mean, it'll be, we'll see, down to the wire, but and I've been to Iran a number of times, and we go to international gatherings, and we are part of the international anti-imperialist world, and people read our stuff, and people watch me on RT, and our books have been translated into Chinese and translated into different languages. So, we're part of that, but, we don't want to get caught up in the drama, right? And that was one critique. There were certain people that were around us for a while that were friendly to us. And every time we sat down with them, they would, they were constantly bragging, we're on the international board of this society, and we beat out CPUSA, and we did that. And it was just like, who cares? And it's like some people in our spaces seem to think that what it means to be a real revolutionary is that the leaders of your group go to international conferences and get the spot for America, and then trash talk the other American activists and organizers and try to block them from being involved in it. And that proves that you're the real revolutionary organization. And it's kind of a waste of time. And unfortunately, I think some of this is Dr. Angelo D'Angelo, who I really respect. He's a nice guy, a guy who's made a lot of sacrifices, a lifelong communist, anti-imperialist. I mean, I don't agree with everything, there's drama, but, Dr. Angelo D'Angelo was a member of the Communist Party USA. And in the 90s, when the Communist Party USA got worse and worse and worse, they expelled him, basically. And for a while, he just pretended to not be expelled. And he just, kept his Communist Party club going in in Staten Island, New York. And he had his club, and he just said, well, you may have expelled me, but I'm just going to keep doing this. And then eventually they formed the Party of Communists USA. And Party of Communists USA was kind of on a mission to go to every international communist gathering and get the Communist Party USA's spot, right? To be like, the Communist Party USA are not the real Communist Party, so we're going to go to Greece and we're going to take their spot on the World Conference of Anti-Imperialist Parties and the International Federation of Women and the World Democratic Youth. And it was, it was like, that was Angelo's mission, was like, because the CPUSA is phony, and I was in the CPUSA when it was still a revolutionary group, and I still believe what Gus Hall believed, before the Communist Party USA became shitty. I'm gonna make it my mission to go around the world and, say that CPUSA is phony and get their spot in international communist stuff. And unfortunately, there are various people that were trained by Angelo D'Angelo or were in the organization that he set up, and they learned that that's a productive use of your time. It's not. Okay. If there's an international anti-imperialist group that's having a gathering, they want us to come to it. Fine. We'll go to it. It's important. We do send international delegations. I've been to Iran. We monitored the Nicaraguan elections. We go to Russia, participate in World Youth Festivals, things like that. But, making your organization's mission, going around the world and getting the spot for Americans and saying all the other Americans are a bunch of phonies and we're the real revolutionaries in America. What are you building in America, right? I mean, is that really the best use of your time? And part of the innovationist turn was that we are not interested in having an argument about who are the real communists, because we're doing innovationism. I mean, the world has changed, right? The Soviet Union is not coming back. The Soviet model is not coming back. China, Marxism, Leninism is part of their heritage, but they're doing socialism with Chinese characteristics. Iran, Marxism, Leninism is not part of their heritage, though they emerged as an anti-colonial movement during the Cold War. And there's an influence there, though not officially. And they're doing not capitalism, but Islam. Bolivarianism, again, Marxism, Leninism is an influence, but the Sandinistas and Venezuela, they're not doing the Soviet thing, right? And that even the North Koreans, that Juche, right? We do the Juche study groups. We study the North Korean ideology. Juche, Marxism, Leninism is a foundation of it, but they've gone in their own direction. They have the Juche ideology, and that we're innovationists, right? We are not trying to claim that we are the pure Marxist Leninists, right? And that doing so comes at the expense of building a real movement. And that's just something I've come to the conclusion of, right? Look, I believe in God. I'm not a real Marxist-Leninist, right? A pure Marxist-Leninist doesn't believe in God. Well, I do. And I'm not going to stop believing in God so that I can be the pure Marxist-Leninist, right? Pure Marxist-Leninists, right? I just... we're not at that stage anymore. I admire everything that the Soviet Union did, and global anti-imperialism in the BRICS is based on what Marxism, Leninism, and the Soviet Union achieved. So we're not going to deny that's a huge part of our history. And the problems of overproduction and capitalism and Lenin's understanding of imperialism and the achievements of Stalin and the achievements of Mao Zedong, and that's all part of our heritage, and we don't disavow or denounce that, but we've also advanced to a higher stage, just like Nicaragua and Venezuela, just like Cuba has, just like China has, just like other anti-imperialist countries have. We're doing something new and exciting, and that unfortunately in America, right? Communism in America is a bad word, right? It's a bad word in America. And unfortunately, because it's such a bad word in America, it tends to attract people who are seeing it as their way of expressing opposition to the society that they're living in, number one. And number two, they're looking for kind of an identity that they can take on, to be like, well, I don't fit in America, so that's because I'm a communist, right? And I have this new identity. And that prevents building an effective mass movement. And that, it's a problem that goes on in a lot of dissident communities, but especially because communism is so demonized in America. The first public CPI gathering we ever had was in Austin, Texas. And there was a guy from Jacobin magazine who got on a plane from New York City and came to it, right? Which means, there's foundation money paying for them, right? This is got on a plane. He was a Jacobin guy. He raised his hand during the Q&A and he said, I have one question. What's your position on left unity? And I answered it. And at that time, we still considered ourselves to be Marxist-Leninists. But even then, I gave my answer, which is even then I said that our positions on left unity is we want unity with the masses of Americans, not unity with the so-called left. And that if every communist group in America were to merge into one, you'd have an organization with about 20,000 people in it. And the idea of them ever merging into one is pretty absurd. And in order to merge them into one, you would have to compromise and accommodate everything that has kept them from ever building a real mass movement among the American people, right? It's a room full of organizations that are not capable of building a mass movement among the masses. And in order for them to be happy enough to merge into one group, you would have to accommodate that craziness. That organization could never wave an American flag because American flag is racist. That organization would have to go out of its way to offend people of religious dissent because we're all pure atheists. That organization would, it probably wouldn't even be able to defend any of the socialist countries because the overwhelming majority of people who call themselves communists denounce and disavow almost every communist government. I mean, it would be a disaster, right? So the left unity is not something I'm interested in. I'm interested in unity with the masses. I want the bulk of the American people that are mad at this imperialist system to mobilize. I want to build a mass movement, and trying to have yet left unity would mean not being able to do that. I want to build a movement that can actually win. Someone asked, is innovationism Marxism-Leninism with American characteristics? Kind of, but it's different also, right? It's, but you could say that, but there's a different emphasis. I'm kind of blown away as we study the Juche ideology. Noah's leading these great sessions. We just had the 11th session last night. How much overlap there is between Juche and its kind of, reinvention of Marxism, Leninism, and innovationism. There's a huge overlap. I didn't even know that. I hadn't studied Juche enough to realize that we both kind of emphasized human creative power, and that Kim Il-sung and myself actually had similar critiques of classical Marxism, Leninism. I didn't know that. I'm actually kind of inspired by that. I think it's very, very cool. So, we are doing innovationism. And, the thing is, if you talk about communism in America, it inevitably becomes a conversation about making everyone equal. And that's not what we're trying to do. I mean, we're not fighting to tax people and make everyone have the same income. That's not what we're doing. We are instead trying to have a government of action that fights for working families. We want to break America out of imperialism. We want a society where growth and innovation is unleashed and the power of the big monopolies is defeated. We want a pro-growth, pro-humanity, anti-monopoly government. Right now, is that communist? Well, I think if you actually were to really study Marxism, you would come to the conclusion that, yeah, that is kind of the kind of thing that Marxists want. But Marxists don't know that, right? In fact, the overwhelming majority of people who call themselves Marxists actually do think that a communist government is trying to make everyone equal. And on top of that, what the American people think communism is making everyone equal. It's just, we're not, in order to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish, we have to do something different. And part of it is that communism is now much more popular. When communism wasn't as popular, if you said you were a communist, people would be like, what does that mean? And you could tell them. You can't do that now, right? Because now, if people say, what is a communist? And you tell them something, they say, well, that's funny because Mamdani is the mayor of New York City and he's a communist and he says it's blank, blank, blank. Well, why should they believe you? This guy's the mayor of New York City and he says communism is this. Why should they listen to you? I got a good point. What makes you think you're right? Oh, you think this guy who's smart enough to become the mayor of New York City, he doesn't understand communism and you do? That's a little bit arrogant now, isn't it? And we got all these people out there now calling themselves communists who believe something completely different than what we believe. So should we go around insisting we're the true communists and confuse everybody? No, we're selling a different product, imagine that, I don't know. I mean, Noah had a good way of putting it in his speech about snake oil, but if you are selling a different product, why advertise it as the same product as somebody else, right? If there's a store that is 10 times as big as your store and they sell different products, why would you try to sound just like that other store? You're not even selling the same product. And if you sound just like that other store and that other store is 10 times bigger, people are just going to go to that other store. Emphasize how you're different. Emphasize why people should go to you and not why they should go to someone 10 times as bigger, right? And that's something that a lot of people don't understand, that especially as we get into the midterms. We're not in the midterms going to try to sound like DSA. We're totally different than DSA, right? You think DSA is going around teaching people about Kim Il-sungya, the flower, you think they're doing that? We're going to sound like innovationists and anti-imperialists, right? And that's part of the reason PSL, the Party for Socialism and Liberation, is collapsing right now, is their whole shtick is to try and out DSA. Well, DSA can DSA better than PSL can. And PSL, their whole shtick was that in the 70s and 80s, and in the 80s and 90s, really, when DSA was in decline and there wasn't much of a left, they could dominate sounding like DSA. But now Jacobin Magazine, brought to you by the Jewish Communal Fund, and the CIA left, and all of them are emerging, and they've got all kinds of foundation money to sound like DSA. And PSL's strategy of, we're just going to sound like DSA and people are going to join us. No, people will join DSA, because if you want to do DSA, you can do DSA with DSA for the same amount of money and get way more out of it because they've got more money. Whereas PSL, right? PSL, they just try to be DSA on a lower budget. It's dumb, right? On a lower budget and with a bunch of baggage, right? DSA, if you ask them about North Korea, they're like, oh, we disavow that evil Stalinist regime. But if you ask PSL, they have to say, well, they're an anti-imperialist workers' state. They have to defend it. Well, DSA is in a better position to be DSA. DSA is PSL without the baggage and with way more money. And PSL is just trying to do DSA with all the communist baggage and way less money. And it's just not going to work. It's not, right? And that, we're doing something unique, right? People should join CPI because they want to do what CPI does, not because they want to do what DSA does with a lower budget, yeah, but look, and honestly, sometimes I wonder if we should even have these conversations on these streams, because I feel like there are a lot of people out there. I don't view this as a competition. And let me just clarify that. I need to clarify that. I don't view this as a competition, right? I think that a rising tide lifts all boats, and that all anti-imperialists should work together, should platform each other and all of that. And that, look, if some awful thing, if it was all over the news, Max Blumenthal, right? He's somebody who says similar things to what we say about international issues. He's been in Iran. He just got messed with at the U.S. border, right? And Max Blumenthal is a great guy. I like the work he does. We don't always agree on everything, but, for the most part, we get along. And, but we're different guys. You know what I mean? We have a different approach, whatever, but we say anti-imperialist stuff. If Max Blumenthal, if it was all over the news that Max Blumenthal was a bad person and was a horrible person and the public was being mobilized against Max Blumenthal, that would be bad for us because we say similar things to what Max Blumenthal says. Who else? Dan Kovalik. Dan Kovalik, he's a guy, doesn't always agree with everything we do, but he says similar things to us. And if Dan Kovalik, if people were assembling in Madison Square Garden to, throw rotten fruit at effigies of Dan Kovalik, that would be bad for us because we sound like Dan Kovalik, right? And I generally, especially when it comes to anti-imperialists, if one of us is having a bad time, it hurts all of us, okay? Not all anti-imperialists feel that way, unfortunately. I think Dan Kovalik and Max pretty much feel that way. But there are some other people, unfortunately, in our spaces who they really want to hurt and defame other anti-imperialists. And so I wonder how much we should talk about tactics on here, because those people are probably watching this and they're taking notes, and they're not taking notes of like, oh, Caleb's right. If one of us gets hurt, it hurts all of us. So we should stand together and be good to each other. No, they're taking notes of like, how can we be more effective and try to destroy CPI because we're the real ones. And so they can go fuck themselves, and that's, unfortunately, there are various people. Look, social media is a curse. And I'll just be honest with you. It's a really good thing that I have my job at RT. I'm not a full-time influencer, right? I get money from this, but I don't get very much money from this. And all the money I have from this goes right back into CPI. CPI does not pay for itself, by the way. People who think I get rich from CPI, it continues to pop up. People think I get rich from CPI. I don't know where they get this from. I do not get rich from CPI. I have a good paying job as a journalist, and I put large amounts of my own money into CPI, and I fundraise to make up the difference. And, I'm not getting rich from CPI, but, people still have it in their head. Oh, Caleb's getting rich from CPI. I am not. I have a good job that pays my bills, and I live in New York City and whatever. I'm not getting rich from CPI. I spend lots of my own money on CPI. CPI does not break even, anywhere near break even, right? Maybe that'll change someday, but the amount of money CPI brings in is nowhere near what I spend on it. But that said, there are certain people that what I was saying was about social media. Social media, right? If your income comes from social media, that's very different. My income doesn't come from social media. But people whose income does come from social media, they really need that money, right? And that puts them in a much more competitive mindset because they really need people to be watching them and not somebody else. And they also need their audience to approve of them. And so if their audience demands they denounce somebody, they've got to do it. And that's one of the strengths of our community is that, I am, a leader of the group, but I don't rely on social media for my income. And that there's a lot of anti-imperialist voices out there that don't have a good paying job. They just rely on social media for their income. And that influences how they act, because they need those social media bucks to come in. And that's a problem, right? That you can't have your organization be led by people whose income depends on social media revenue. Right. And that's a problem, and of course, they're going to be hyper competitive and nasty and stuff like that because their income depends on it. But you can't build a movement if people can't work together. Right. If you have to make an enemy out of everyone who sounds just like you. Right. To please anonymous people in your chat, you're not going to be able to build a movement. And building a social media brand and building a movement are very, very different. And I know a lot of people who have a very big following. But if you look at their social media, it's tiny. Uhuru is a great example. Uhuru has been in the New York Times. Chairman O'Malley has been interviewed by Tucker Carlson. They're a national news story. The Uhuru case is like a really big deal. But you look at their YouTube channel, they get like less than 200 views on their videos. What's going on there? Right? That's not right. Right? And they have two huge community centers in Florida. One in Florida and one in St. Louis. They have huge buildings. They do, millions of dollars worth of community work every year, right? And they're running farmers markets, and they were a national news story because the government went after them. And you look at their social media, it's like a drop in the bucket. What's going on? And it's not that they're just, and then you get all these wise guys. Well, maybe they just suck, Caleb. No, they don't suck. They are better organizers. I wish we could do the kind of good organizing they do. And they can organize in ways we couldn't even dream of. 2 huge buildings and farmers markets and prison reentry programs and all of that. So why is their social media tiny? Because the U.S. government's out to get them. Because they were dragged to court for being foreign agents. That's why. Because social media is rigged, right? But, if you organize with Uhuru in real life, they can have real events where hundreds of people come out to support them. So meanwhile, there are certain people whose social media is huge and they don't really have a real following, that was one thing, I realized a couple years ago, right, that, the space we were in, for a while, we were in the same space as certain people, certain influencers. We're no longer in the same space. We're trying really hard not to be in the same space. And I realized that space, if you added up every person who's ever come to an in real life event, you're looking at 200 people tops. And I said, look, that's just not like being king of that space is not a worthwhile endeavor, right? That every person who's ever come to any in real life event in that particular space, that whatever you want to call it, MAGA communism or whatever, you're looking at 200 people tops. Is that what we want to do? We just want to be king of that space. We want to be king of the 200 people who are active MAGA communists or whatever they want to call themselves. No, we want to get to the masses, right? We need to get, we need to get to the masses. And, so, and that's, wanting to be king of the protest cage is what I've ridiculed PSL for over and over and over again. But wanting to be king of a social media niche is, I would say, an even less lofty aspiration than trying to be king of the protest cage. We're not doing it. We're trying to build a movement, and we will work with people with whom we disagree with to build that movement. And that's how it goes. Okay. So now I have another buy me a coffee. Someone bought a coffee and said, does CPI support a shorter workday for mothers and fathers? Yeah, why not? Yeah, that would be fine. I mean, we're moving toward a gig economy, right? Where I would say that, anything to benefit, families with kids, give them more time, I would be for in general. But again, that kind of organizing, I don't know how effective that's going to be, simply because we're moving toward a gig economy where people set their own hours, things like that. But yeah, I'm for better protections for workers on the job, higher minimum wage, shorter work week, benefits for people with kids. Right. I think that fathers in these conversations is important, because I think you focus on mothers, you just drive women out of the workforce intentionally or not. We do want young men to be active in their kids' lives. Extra 10 hours in a week, take them fishing. Yeah, great. Kids should have time with their parents. 2, is migration tension in Europe becoming more and more toxic? I saw one reform candidate say he wants to cut aid to Pakistan and then really, really hate Pakistanis, Africans, and Arabs. I think they will literally say you should assimilate. Even some of the leftist parties believe in it. I don't know. I mean, the anti-immigrant thing, again, my position, as I've stated many times on these streams, is there is a crisis. It's a big problem that people are fleeing their home countries and coming to the West. That's a problem. The solution is not to demonize and terrorize immigrant communities. It's not. And that, look, this is something that some people on the right say, but then they go along with it. And this is something some people on the left say, and then they go along with it. Everybody knows that the ruling elite are trying to fracture the population into smaller identity groups and get us all to fight with each other. Everybody knows that. Alex Jones has been saying that for years. Oh, the ruling elite wants a race war. But then every time the right is promoting a racial issue where it's like, the black people are against our police, he always takes the white side or the police side. And it's like, okay, so you're playing into what you said the ruling class is doing. There's people on the left that are like that, right? Where, they say, oh yeah, they're trying to divide us all. They want us to focus on race and identity and hate our neighbors and not hate the ruling class. But then whenever the left is promoting a race cultural issue, they take one side of it. And, there was a case that happened a few months ago. I'm not even going to mention where. It was a court case. And I looked at it and I said, I ain't touching this. Wouldn't be helpful. And I just didn't touch it. And I'm increasingly learning that there are issues. There are issues that come up like that where I just don't touch it. And that some of these issues, I must say, are related to one's life experiences. Okay? They are. And that the way you react to certain YouTube videos, or even you react to the facts of certain cases, is going to be based on your life experience, right? I do not have the experience of a black person. I could watch a video of some incident of somebody acting a certain way, and I would react one way based on my experience as a white man, and somebody else would react a different way based on their experience as a black person. And and that's what this kind of social media stuff depends on, right? You take some cases, right? The beating of Rodney King, everyone watched that video and everyone was horrified by it. Right. But increasingly we have cases where if your experience is one way, you're going to react to it totally justified based on your experience. And if your experience is another way, you're going to react to it based on your experience, and I just try to not comment on those cases. For example, right. since the pandemic in New York City, the subways have been pretty scary. I'll be honest. And they're not scary because you're afraid of getting robbed. People don't get robbed for the most part in New York City. I mean, it happens, but it's pretty rare. I got robbed the first year I lived in New York City, but like for the most part, people don't get robbed on the subways, right? What happens is you're on the subway and a crazy homeless person comes on and starts screaming and yelling and punching the wall and throwing their shoes or throwing something. And you're really, really worried. You're sitting there and you're worried. And these homeless people, a lot of them are white. This isn't a racial thing. You're sitting there on the subway and there's a crazy homeless person talking to themselves. And they're not just talking to themselves. They're, punching the wall. They're taking their shoes off and throwing them across the subway. And you're really worried their shoe is going to hit you in the head. And you're really worried that as they're punching the invisible person in their mind, they're going to punch you. And then you'll have to defend yourself. And then the police are going to be called and arrest both of you. And you're really worried, like, I want this crazy homeless person to have their crazy homeless episode in a way that doesn't cause me a big problem. You know what I'm saying? And you're sitting there and you're really worried that this crazy homeless person is going to, be crazy and homeless in a way that puts you in danger. And it's a real fear. It's a real fear that you have. And many times I'm on the subway going to work or I'm on the subway going someplace and crazy homeless person comes into the subway and we're all sitting there. Every person on the subway is thinking, okay, all right, are they going to move on to the next car? Or when they swing, are they going to hit me? And then I'm going to block it. And then I'm going to have a fist fight with the homeless person. And then the police are going to come and handcuff both of us. And this is going to be in court for the next 3 years, and you're worried about it. You're genuinely worried that and there's just a lot of people since the pandemic walking around talking to themselves. And, I don't quite know what to make of it. Part of it is they just don't have services for people. Right. And I think that's part of it is that they don't have places that people that are that mentally ill can go and just be taken care of. And that's a problem, but it's frightening. And that, what you do is you just ignore people like that. Right. You just ignore them. Right. But, if someone punches you in the face, it's really hard to just ignore that. Right. If somebody's throwing, if someone's throwing their shoes and hitting you in the face, it's very hard to ignore that. So what do you do? Right. And that's a very scary thing. And, I look at some of these incidents I see in the media and, part of me thinks of being on the subway as the crazy homeless person is there. And it's like, well, what if the crazy homeless person punched me and I punched back, how might this be interpreted? And, that's my experience, but somebody else has had other experiences in their life. And you got to be really careful with all of this. We all have different experiences. We all come from different backgrounds, and a lot of stuff I see on social media is stuff that is designed to really make people angry, and to really touch people's pain. Right. People have had really awful experiences in their lives. And a lot of what we see on social media is like potently designed to touch that nerve on everybody. Right. And there's stuff designed to touch the nerves of women. That's a whole industry now, is triggering women, making women think, that every man who walks around is a sexual predator who's coming to get them. There's a whole industry of triggering white people and making them think, migrants and black criminals are out to get them. And, they got to buy 20 guns, and triggering people has become an industry. And that was a problem with mainstream media long before the internet. But now in the age of the internet, it's much more specific, right? It used to be they had one TV news broadcast designed to trigger everybody. Well, now they know who you are. Right. And based on your doom scrolling and the algorithm and the AI that's following you, they figure out exactly what'll trigger you. And they send you the videos that will trigger you and make you upset. Right. They know how to upset you and get you worked up and get you upset, specifically you. And that's a problem. But anyway, that's a long answer to a question. And I do apologize if anything I said came across as insensitive. That's kind of what I'm saying here, is that we all have different experiences. And I can't pretend that my experience is the same as somebody else. Oh, someone also asked, where did Zionism come from? Well, the British Empire, right? I mean, that's where it came from. Actually, Christian Zionism in Britain predates Jewish Zionism, right? Christian Zionism. Then there was the World Zionist Organization led by Theodore Herzl, right? And eventually you had the Balfour Declaration. Okay. Okay. All right. Very good. All right. Okay. All right. Yeah. Twitter is bad for this kind of stuff. Twitter is very triggering. It is very triggering, and I mean, things happen, right? And, I mean, well, anyway, I could talk about that all night. And honestly, it's not a good topic because even me saying this, there's somebody inevitably who's hearing this right now and thinking, Caleb, I have had an experience that you will never have because you are a white male, and they are right. And you are belittling my experience. I am not belittling your experience. I am not. And, and I am trying to say here that I will see video clips and they will affect me very differently than they'll affect you. And it's because my life has been very different because I'm a white male. And I admit that. And that and we just need to be aware of this. I guess that's what I'm saying. And I do apologize if this sounds like I'm belittling anyone's hardship or anything anyone's been through. I'm not, right? I'm telling you that I have to be honest and say, I won't react to video clips the same way other people might react to them, because I'm going to be reacting to them based on my experiences, and other people are going to be reacting it based on their experiences. That's actually, I actually read a book by a minister, and it was about preaching sermons. That's one thing he said is you never really know how your words will affect people, because everyone has different associations with different words. That's a very good observation. And also, people remember different things, right? When you give a 40-minute speech, people will remember 4 or 5 things at the most out of it, and it will be different things. And you don't know what those 4 or 5 things will be, right? And that the hard thing about any form of public speaking is that when you're speaking before an audience, the audience will take their own experience, their own interests, their own bias, and they will filter what you said, and what they do hear and remember will stick with them in different ways and impact them different ways based on that. And that's what makes it very, very hard to be a public speaker. And especially in our time, we don't have shared experiences in the same way. We don't all watch the same movies. We don't all watch the same TV shows. We don't all read the same books, right? That nowadays, media is much more niche. And because of that, because media is very, very niche, it's hard to speak in a way that will have the same impact on everyone, because not everyone has watched the same media and has the same information. All right, folks. Well, thank you. Let me check. Is there anything on Rumble? Nope, nothing on Rumble. All right, I'm going to say goodnight because it's well after midnight and I'm very, very tired. So register for the CPI convention in Chicago. We need to have you there. It's going to be great. Dare to struggle, dare to win. I'm going to put on the closing music, and hopefully I'll be back tomorrow night. I will probably be on here tomorrow night. If not, it'll be the next night. I think I'm interviewing somebody on Friday night, and Saturday night I'm going on a podcast, and then I'm doing the show after the podcast. And yeah, a lot of things are happening. So, all right. Dare to struggle, dare to win.
New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.